other than being given a command. May Allah preserve the one who gave the command. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for nights like this and being able to have nights like this with hearts like you all's and hearts like those who come together in remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and come together in remembrance of his Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. One could look out at the particular condition of the ummah right now, as our teachers have reminded us. One could look out and say, we're in dire straits. One could say, we're probably in the most tightest pressure cooker for our iman that we've seen in a long time. Others could say we're under more attack than ever before. Our teachers would remind us that in these particular times, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always choosing. He's always making his selection of those who hold up the banner of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, amongst these burdens, within these burdens, while we feel the pressure perhaps of the world on our necks as Muslims collectively, whatever we may be experiencing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making his selection. For us, our choice, our lane of action could be, am I prepared to be carved into whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is carving those he is selecting into? What have I done within my own personal life? What have I strived for within my own personal hours and minutes and seconds that go fleeting by, and we look up and you say, man, it's Friday already. How have I prepared myself to be able to answer the call when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it? And that call can come in multiple ways. It could be a test of the utmost faith. When you see young children, maybe in their last throes of life, and what is upon their tongue? What are they remembering? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're remembering the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. These are children who've been prepared. Us as young men, adults, we have to look very deeply in the mirror and ask ourselves, if we're in those same situations, would the dhikr of Allah be upon our tongue? Or will we say something else? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he reminds us, and this makes me think about, this is a little incident that happened earlier, coming across somebody who, whatever, maybe the person was having the most roughest of days that they could possibly be having. I just happened to collide with it. Bismillah. And so Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam reminds us, right, that whoever helps someone who is struggling, right, with the affairs of this world, and we all have things that we struggle with the affairs of this world, right? He says, نفس الله عنه قربة من قرب باليوم القيامة. What does he say? Whoever does that, whoever helps someone, so you see somebody struggling, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then does what for that person on the other side of the coin. And this entire affair is about the other side of the coin, the other side of the road. He says he'll help them on Yawm al-Qiyamah. You help somebody here, he'll help, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help that person, that mu'min, in Yawm al-Qiyamah. And so you ask, how could we be helping each other? How could we be supporting each other with the akhlaq of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? This is the best possible way, right here, right now, while we're amongst each other, passing back and forth every day. We're not asking anything lofty out of anybody, but to do what? Embody the akhlaq of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This for us is our most paramount task. Why is that? We can scream and shout till our lungs are hoarse. We could go about our days, I have something to say about this. I have something to say about that. I have something to say about this. But the very people we rub shoulders with, the very Muslims we live with, if they are not under our Rahma, if they are not under us answering the call to treat them like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has reminded us to treat each other, then we are constantly in loss. And this is a reminder to myself and those of us who may be feeling like, what can I do right now? What can I do right now? Embody the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And I say that because I saw somebody, for all intents and purposes, person was completely having a troubled moment. That troubled moment meant me. I could have met fire with fire. Right, Ali? Could have met fire with fire. But inshallah, I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that it's counted on my scales. I said, you know what? Maybe this affair needs some coolness. This other Muslim needs some coolness. They need some water on their situation. And so every day we're coming across each other and other people we're meeting and other people we may know and love and see every day. And the dunya is choking them. How criminal would it be upon us if they don't meet Rahma when we meet them? This is something we can do every day because all of us are going through trials. This is something that we can do each and every time we come across somebody else's path. And so we can say, what is one of the main establishments of the affair here within these doors? Not everybody gonna go be shaykh. Not everybody's gonna go do something that's in front of people. What we all can have a grip of the rope of is our character towards each other. We can outstrip each other in that. And if you have a community, if you have a society, if you have families, if you have sons, fathers, daughters, nieces, whoever, who have bound themselves with their motive to that reality, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will start to free us from a lot of the things that we're struggling with. But until then, until it really sinks in for us, we'll constantly be what? We'll meet somebody who's struggling with something, and then we immediately fire with fire, and it's all bad. People are fighting in the streets. People are arguing with each other. They're debating with each other about Mulk. Abbas, radiallahu anhu, the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He's sitting with Abu Sufyan, and he sees the rows of army coming in, right in Fath Mecca. And so what does he say to Abu Sufyan? He said, MashaAllah, this your dominion of your nephew is like, yes. And what does he tell? What does he tell Abu Sufyan? La, this is Nabuwa. What do you mean by Nabuwa? Right. It wasn't that they just blasted open the doors. It wasn't that their army was just so overpower them. The same akhlaq of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, since he had been a reality up until then, carried them until that particular stage. And so I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to embody these things. Surround our homes with it. Surround our homes with it. Surround the homes that are next to our homes with it. 10 homes to the right, 10 homes to the left, 10 homes forward, 10 homes behind us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He'll circulate that nur, inshallah, and people will come running to the Muslims for the answers once again. There's a portion of the night known to the knowers and wishful wayfarers traveling the road to be sober. This is a time when heaven stills and Allah extends His gaze to the hardened, hollowed out, and humbled hands raised. This is the passage where dying is living and living is dying, where the bounties brought forth to bid us for buying, where salam of all sorts is written for trying, and the thought that all's lost is hidden from minds. This is the hour where carpets turn hospital and surgery is sujood, where the quiet tap of tasbih serves as interludes for the wailing of the wayward and dua being diffused. And no matter how many the depths of souls have been abused, these are the times where the wails of the mu'min fail to go refused. Should you find yourself having cried out help, how was our Habib not stated? Gaze inside my well. Ain't he guaranteed that we'll receive whatever is asked for? And no matter how many gallons of pain the truth of the past pours, none can amount to the valleys of mercy Al-Qayyum has had for those who stand nightly for Rahma at Al-Rahman's door. And as these life's hours hourly escape, How are we to take this life in our lifetime, endowing it with states that cause the limbs to stir and bow them to the king? This is the content of courage no coward could ever claim. Those who stand nightly in this lifetime will be showered in this rain. On a day when our mouths will not be able to mouth, but our mouths will all explain what we did with our hours but for the day. And if Jannah is just beneath moonlight, shouldn't we be crowded at the gate? As if they knew what was distributed to the outstretched hands of the believers, they would kill sleep itself just to stand as a receiver. They would ransom their own eyelids just to be seen by the Redeemer. And if not for the bloody feet of Al-Habib, not a fraction of this is known. This is the outcome of his dua being cast into our homes. A millennia worth of worship wouldn't pay back a fraction of the loan. So may Allah place barakah in every watery eye and crackling of the bones who rise in the midnight hour in reverence of the Master of the throne. Allahumma salli wa sallam wa barik alayhi wa ala alihi.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيده، وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد طب القلوب ودوائها وعافية الأبدان وشفائها ونور الأبصار وضيائها وروح الأرواح وسر بقائها وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Just to continue on what our beloved brother said, it is narrated in the Kutub of Sira and Hadith, a story of two people, two lovers, of Mughith and Barira. They were a couple that were married, and during their time of marriage they were enslaved. They were both enslaved. And Barira came to an agreement with her master that she will pay for her own freedom. And the master agreed, so Barira went to Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, that home of mercy, subhanallah, and she asked of her help. So she helped her and Barira was freed. And during that time, for the rules of that civilization or that environment, if she was free, she had the right to choose whether to stay with her husband and stay in slavery or go to a new life. And she chose a life of freedom and away from this husband. And it is said in different narrations, she did not like him as much. She didn't want to be with him. Yet Mughith loved her so much that Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu narrates that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when they saw Mughith walking behind Barira, sometimes even in tawaf, and weeping and crying for her to come back to him. And he sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Ya ajab, how surprised, how shocking, how much Mughith loves Barira, yet she despises him. So Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, out of his mercy and compassion, he went to her to intermediate, to intercede. He said, why don't you take him back? She said, is this a command, Ya Rasulullah? Because if it's a command, she would have taken him back right away. Subhanallah. He said, no, it's just an intercession. She said, if it's an intercession, then I want nothing to do with him. Subhanallah. But what's shocking is in different narrations, Mughith heard the story later. And when he heard the story, the moment the story was completed, he said, I have nothing to do with her. Her love has left my heart. And the reason for that, he said, I will not love anyone who does not consider the intercession of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just the fact that she didn't consider his intercession, not even take him back, just consider it. He said he doesn't love her anymore. Subhanallah. These people loved what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved. It's not that they just loved the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They loved what he loved. It is even narrated that the companions radiallahu anhum would eat what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam ate. And they would avoid anything that he didn't eat, even if it was halal, just because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam avoided it. And from the etiquettes of the Salaf is you would ask about the manners of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and everything, even how he showered, how he used the bathroom, so they would try to follow as much as possible. And we know Sayyidina Ibn Umar would even walk behind the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and put his foot where the footstep of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was. This is because whatever is beloved to the beloved should become beloved to you. This is why Majnun Layla became so famous. He said, أمر على الديار ديار ليلى وأقبل هذا الجدار وهذا الجدار وما حب الديار شغفنا قلبي ولكن حب من كان يسكن الديار. He said, I walk by the houses and ruins of Layla and I kiss this door and I kiss that wall. And it's not the love of walls that has overtaken my heart, but it's the love of who was within those walls, subhanAllah. And if we love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we should follow in his steps, and we should follow in loving what he loved and care for what he cared for, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one of the most things he cared about, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is his ummah. His constant dua was ummati, ummati. Matter of fact, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us, لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ دَعْوَةٌ مُسْتَجَابَةٌ. Every prophet has a dua which is guaranteed to be answered. And he sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, but I saved my dua. I saved it for my ummah for the day of judgment, subhanallah. For his love for you and me. He saved his dua which was guaranteed to answer. He saved it for us in the day of judgment. So if we genuinely love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and we want to walk in his footsteps, we should care about his ummah. He wanted khair for his ummah. He wanted to call his ummah to this mercy of Islam. It's a mercy following the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if we loved him, we should take by those footsteps. If we loved him, we should care about the affairs of the ummah. And the hadith that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever does not care about the affairs of the ummah, then he's not from it. We should worry about every struggle that is happening across, and we know the current struggles that our ummah is going through right now. From the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if we cannot help financially, or we cannot help with our power, we help with our hearts. We help with dua. We send dua for those in need across the globe. We send salutations with the intention, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever makes his entire salutations to me, غُفِرَ ذَنْبُهُ وَكَفَى هَمَّهُ. Whoever sends his salutations to me, then his sins will be forgiven and his affairs will be taken care of. So why not send salutations upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the intentions that the calamity striking this ummah will be lifted. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow our hearts to be filled with the love of Rasulullah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to love that which Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam loved. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to alleviate all the calamities from our brothers and sisters across the globe. Wastaghfiru minkum wa jazakumullah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمدك اللهم كما ينبغي أن تحمد، وصل اللهم وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وأحمد وعلى آله وصحابته والتابعين وعلى كل من استنى بسنته واقتفى أثره إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فالسلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. فكما أن الله تبارك وتعالى جعل لهذه الأمة بأن له حق على هذه الأمة، وحق الله على الناس أن يعبدوه ولا يشركوا به شيئا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله عليه وسلم. After praising the Prophet ﷺ and praising Allah Ta'ala, the Prophet or the Shaykh sends salam to everyone. And he says that every nation has its right, and this nation is the right of all nations. And just as such, Allah has set certain rights upon this nation.
فكذلك سبحانه وتعالى جعل حقوق المصطفى صلى الله عليه وسلم على هذه الأمة، فرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم له حق على هذه الأمة.
And just in this same sense, Allah Ta'ala has established the reality, the right of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam upon this particular ummah.
ولذلك تجد أن القاضي عياض وهو من علماء المسلمين ألف كتابا سماه كتاب الشفاء في حقوق المصطفى صلى الله عليه وسلم.
And this is the reason why Qadi Iyad, who was one of the big scholars of the previous eras, titled his book, which is very well known, Ash-Shifa, Kitab Ash-Shifa, on the reality, on the essence of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
ولذلك النبي المصطفى صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يحثنا ويحضنا ويأمرنا أن نربي أبناءنا على محبته صلى الله عليه وسلم.
And this is why the Prophet ﷺ has told us, has impressed upon us with strength and with urgency, that we raise our children particularly upon loving the Prophet ﷺ.
حتى تنشئ هذه الأمة وهي تعرف لرسول الله قدرها.
So that we may be able to build and establish this ummah, and that we may all know his reality and his true essence.
ولذلك ما نراه الآن في المجتمع الإسلامي من ابتعاد عن سيدنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وعدم احترامه إلا أنهم لم يعرفوا قدر رسول الله.
What we have seen so far in the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ today, what we see today is that there is a lack of this implementation of knowing and realizing the reality of the Prophet ﷺ.
ومن حقوق رسول الله على هذه الأمة هو ما ذكره الله تبارك وتعالى في قرآنه الكريم.
And the true reality, the true right of the Prophet ﷺ upon this nation, upon this ummah, has been mentioned by Allah Ta'ala in his book.
حيث قال جل من قائل وتعزروه وتوقروه أي تعظموه وتبجلوه.
And this is where Allah Ta'ala has told us to glorify and to ennoble the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
ولكن تجد بعض الناس الآن لما يروا من يعظم رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يرمونهم بالشرك والعياذ بالله.
And we see nowadays that some of the people, when they see those who are bringing, who are glorifying and mentioning the greatness of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that these people are called mushrikeen wal-'iyadhu billah.
ويستدلون بقول سيدنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تطروني كما أطرأت النصارى المسيح عيسى بن مريم.
And they use as their evidence or proof the saying of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he said, "Do not speak about me as the Christians have spoken about their prophet, Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam."
فالبوصيري رحمه الله صاحب قصيدة البردة المباركة له في هذا الكلام شأن، حيث يقول رضي الله تعالى عنه: دع ما ادعته النصارى في نبيهم واحكم بما شئت فيه مدحا واحتكم، وانسب إلى ذاته ما شئت من شرف، وانسب إلى قدره ما شئت من عظم، فإن فضل رسول الله ليس له حد فيعرب عنه ناطق بفمه.
And this is the reason why Imam Busayri, the author of the well-known and well-read Qasida Burda, had the inclination, had the thought to include a line or two in his piece or his poem of the Burda about this specific saying of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he said, leave that as the Christians have said about their prophet, and say whatever it is about the Prophet ﷺ that you feel is appropriate, and speak about his essence and his greatness, and speak about that which he is overbearing upon all things. These are famous lines within the Burda, and inshallah, if you would like to look at them, they're very well known lines.
ومعنى هذا أي لا تقل بأنه إله ولا ابن إله كما قالت النصارى، وهذا هو الإطراء أي تجاوز الحد.
And it's not as if we were saying that the Prophet ﷺ is the Lord, or that he is the son of the Lord, as the Christians have mentioned. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ was saying when he said this about the Christians, about not speaking about him, to not say these types of things.
وقل فيه ما شئت من التشريف والتكريم والتعظيم، فمهما قلت فذلك لن يبلغ حقه صلى الله عليه وسلم، فهو أعلى من ذلك.
And so if we leave these two things aside, our job is to then say and to remember everything that is great about the Prophet ﷺ, except something that would not be befitting of him, because in reality he is greater than all of this.
ولذلك قال فإن فضل رسول الله ليس له حد حتى يعرب عنه ناطق بفمه.
Yes, yeah, okay. That yes, so that the Prophet ﷺ doesn't have any. There is no limit to praising the Prophet ﷺ, because there's no limit to him, and so therefore there are no words that can. There is no end to the words which you can use to praise the Prophet ﷺ.
ولذلك ينبغي لنا أيها السادة الكرام أن نعظم رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وأن نبجله امتثالا لقول الله عز وجل.
And this is why the Salihun, the righteous people, have encouraged and impressed upon us to remember the Prophet ﷺ and to speak about him in these ways, because this is what Allah Ta'ala has asked of us.
والله تبارك وتعالى عظم هذا النبي المصطفى صلى الله عليه وسلم.
And Allah Ta'ala himself is actually the one who glorifies and mentions the greatness of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
حيث تجد في القرآن الكريم أن الله لما تكلم عن سيدنا عيسى وموسى وسيدنا إبراهيم فقال يا عيسى يا موسى يا إبراهيم وغير ذلك.
And we see this, that Allah Ta'ala, when he refers to the other prophets in the Quran, like Sayyidina Musa, Sayyidina Isa, Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, he mentions them by their name.
أما لما تكلم عن سيدنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما ناداه باسمه قط، ولكن أردفه بحلة النبوة والرسالة فقال يا أيها النبي يا أيها الرسول محمد رسول الله إلى غير ذلك.
And this is when Allah Ta'ala, when he speaks or when he addresses the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Quran, this is why he speaks to him in a way that it glorifies him by saying, Ya ayyuhan nabi, oh you who have been sent, Ya ayyuhar rasul, oh you who are the messenger, or he refers to him as Muhammadun Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam.
كما أنه سبحانه وتعالى أمر المؤمنين ألا يرفعوا أصواتهم في حضرة رسول الله.
And this is also where this is also indicated where Allah Ta'ala instructs and commands the people to not raise their voice in the presence of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
وألا ينادوه كما ينادون بعضهم بعضا.
And that we don't speak to him or call to him as we do any other regular person.
وتعجب كل العجب لهؤلاء الذين يتكلمون عن حضرة المصطفى صلى الله عليه وسلم ويذكرون اسمه مجرد من غير سيادة ولا لفظ للتعظيم.
This is it becomes strange. It becomes wondrous to think about how people can then mention the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam without following with sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
ولذلك كان الإمام مالك إمام دار الهجرة صاحب المذهب العظيم يقول رضي الله تعالى عنه اعلم أن حرمة رسول الله ميتا كحرمته حيا فلا فرق بين الممات والحياة.
And this is why Imam Malik, radiallahu anh, the Imam of Hijrah, the Imam of Medina, in one of his sayings said that know that the hurma, know that the holiness, the sanctity of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his passing, in his non-presence, is just as much as it was when he was alive.
وكان سيدنا عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله تعالى عنه إذا ما سمع رجل رفع صوته في مسجد النبي نهاه عن ذلك.
And this is why Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anh, when during the time of after the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's passing, whenever he heard someone raise their voice just inside the message of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would abscond them and he would tell them to not do so.
فكان الصحابة الكرام رضي الله تعالى عنهم يعظمون نبينا المصطفى صلى الله عليه وسلم ولا يرون في ذلك شركا أبدا.
And this is an indication, and this shows that the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, continuously and were effectively glorifying and recognizing the greatness of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and would never have considered this to be associating any partners or committing shirk with Allah Ta'ala.
فكان صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا دخل على أصحابه قاموا إليه إجلالا وتعظيما.
And this is why when the Prophet ﷺ would ever enter a room with the Sahaba or with the companions, that they would stand out of honor and recognition of his greatness.
فقال لهم ذات مرة لا تقوموا لي كما تقوم الأعاجم لملوكهم.
And this is why the Prophet ﷺ told his companions, do not stand for me like the regular people would stand for a king.
تأدبا من حضرته صلى الله عليه وسلم.
So that they may have adab with the presence, so they may have true manners with the presence of the Prophet ﷺ.
فدخل ذات مرة والصحابة جلوس فقام سيدنا حسان ابن ثابت شاعره.
And so all of the companions would sit then, except for Sayyidina Hassan ibn Thabit radiallahu anhu, who is the poet of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
فقال له ألم أنهاكم على ذلك؟
And so he asked Sayyidina Hassan, he said, have you not heard that I've advised about this?
فقال رضي الله تعالى عنه
And he said radiallahu ta'ala anhu,
قيامي للعزيز فرض علي. قيامي للعزيز فرض علي وترك القيام ما يستقيم أو ترك الفرض ما يستقيم.
And so he responded that standing to ennoble you, standing to glorify you is incumbent upon us. And to not do so would be that we were not established.
عجبت لمن له عقل وفهم. عجبت لمن له عقل وفهم.
It becomes wondrous to someone who has mental capacity and who has understanding.
عجبت لمن له عقل وفهم يرى هذا الجمال ولا يقوم.
Allah. It becomes wondrous, it becomes ajib, it becomes strange to someone who has this mental faculty, who has understanding, to see this beauty and to not stand of it.
وكانوا رضي الله تعالى عنهم كما ورد عن سيدنا عبد الله بن عمر أنه كان يقبل يدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم.
And so this is why it was narrated about Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu that he used to kiss the hands of Sayyidina Hassan ibn Thabit, of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
فالتعظيم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم واجب على هذه الأمة. يسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يعرفنا قدر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم.
And so it becomes very well clear that praising and glorifying and mentioning the greatness and bringing greatness to the Prophet ﷺ is incumbent upon everyone else. And so we ask Allah assistance in this.
ولذلك كما ورد في الحديث القدسي عن الله عز وجل أنه قال.
And this is why it comes in a hadith Qudsi from Allah Ta'ala where it says,
لو سلكوا إلي كل طريق.
That you could travel every single of the paths.
واستفتحوا علي كل باب.
And attempt to open all of the doors.
ما فتحت لهم حتى يأتوا خلفك يا محمد.
And none of them will open except by after you, Sayyidina Rasulullah.
فلذلك نسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يكرمنا بشفاعة سيدنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وأن يرزقنا حبه وحب من يقربنا إلى حبه وأن يجعله ذخرنا وشفيعنا في دنيانا وأخرانا إنه ولي ذلك والقادر عليه. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.